Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast. I am your host, Tom.Nixon. Our guest this week is best-selling author Stuart Gibbs. Stuart is the author of a number of best-selling novels, including the Spy School series. Welcome, Stuart.
Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely. Big fan of the Spy School and your other books. Let's talk a little bit about your career trajectory. How did you get to here?
Well, I'm one of those people who always loved writing for as long as I can remember. So even when I was, was young, even probably before kindergarten, from like the moment I can remember reading, I was trying to write stories. And I've got cabinets back there. There's still like all my old stories are in there. And so I always wanted to be an author. I didn't know how anybody became an author, except for Michael Crichton. I knew Michael Crichton had gone to medical school and written books on the side. And so I was like, I guess that's what you do. So I was actually pre-med for like 2 days. But then, at university, I was kind of like, I really didn't really want to take those pre-med classes. I was also really interested in the film business. So, but I wasn't really going to a school. I had a big film program. But I started studying communications. I also actually like my non medical school science major turned into biology. So I actually I studied field biology when I was in college, and I ended up studying the capybara when I was in college as one of my projects. I was really pretty much the first person from the United States to study that animal. Everybody knows what they are now. Nobody knew back then. So I was doing all that, but over the course of this, I realized that I really loved writing, and I was gonna do whatever I could to be a writer. And so when I was trying to sell books, that didn't work out. I moved out to Hollywood, and I started working in the film business, sold some screenplays, worked as a screenwriter for many years. But I never really got over that idea that I really wanted to try and write a book. Coming up on like 20 years ago, there was a writer's strike. We couldn't work in the movie business and the TV business. So I reached out to an agent and said, hey, maybe I could think about writing a book. And that agent said to me, had I ever thought about doing middle grade, which I had not at the time. But I had all these ideas that I recognized could be really good middle grade ideas. Middle grade was really just kind of taking off. There have been some big successes with Percy Jackson and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but there was a lot of room in that. They're really trying to get kids to read, boys in particular, and I had a lot of ideas that seemed to really appeal to boys. Girls really like my stuff too, which is great. But so I really thought maybe I was going to write one book. I wrote Belly Up, and I had such a great time writing that book that I was really eager to do more. So I pitched my publisher Spy School and did that, and I never would have imagined that many years later I'd be, waiting for book 14 to come out and at work on book 15 in a series.
Where did you get the idea for Spy School?
Spy School was kind of my oldest idea of the series I do, because it really dates back to when I was in about 6th grade. And like I said, I was always writing. I was always coming up with ideas. And I saw my first James Bond movie. My friends we all saw this James Bond movie. We were all really taken with James Bond. He was just such a cool hero to all of us. And so my friends were sort of running around like imagining themselves to be James Bond, but I actually wrote what we would now call fan fiction. I was not exactly a James Bond story. It was a Jimmy Bond story about James Bond's son. And, I had this joking idea while I was writing the story that he would go to a top secret spy school to learn how to be a spy. I didn't finish that story. I didn't really know where to go with it. I was just sort of goofing around, but I knew there was something to that idea. And so over the years, I would just come back to that idea, trying to figure out how to make it work.
So I saw on your website, because I was stalking you, and you have 5 best-selling middle grade series. You want to tell us a little bit about each of them?
Well, so there's the FunJungle series. That book I mentioned, Belly Up, was the first book in that series, and that is a mystery series that takes place at a zoo. It's not a normal zoo. It's like somebody took a theme park and combined it with the zoo. That one was really inspired by when I was studying biology in college. I was doing my capybara research at a zoo, and I ended up volunteering at the zoo too, and that allowed me to see behind the scenes of the zoo, which I just thought was an amazing setting for a story, and somewhere around that time, kind of thought, oh, it'd be great to do like a mystery series set at a zoo. That series, so it's about a kid who just gets involved solving these mysteries, starting at FunJungle, but eventually spreading out to other places. Always kind of an environmental issue in the mysteries of protecting some animal or another. I do the What's About Tim series, which is sort of my youngest skewing series. That is an illustrated series about a knight back in olden times who does not like, well, he's a peasant at the beginning, but he hates being a peasant. So he volunteers to be a knight, which is very dangerous and treacherous, but better than being a peasant. So he has adventures there. I did a Charlie Thorne series. Charlie Thorne is the smartest person on earth, even though she is only 12. And because of her great intellect, she has been really forced against her will by our government under a very dangerous job where it turns out that many of the greatest minds from throughout history, like Einstein and Darwin and Isaac Newton and Cleopatra, have discovered things that the rest of humanity couldn't be trusted with. So they hid those things away, created clues to find them. And Charlie's job is to crack those clues and track these things down. But she doesn't really know who to trust, even amongst the people who brought her in, and there's bad guys, and so there's action adventure all over the world in that. And then there's the Moonbase Alpha series, which is a mystery series that takes place at the very first moon base, where mysteries occur there, and the children of the first residents of the moon base end up investigating those. I ended that series a few years ago, but that is now being released in graphic novel forms. So I've got that series as well.
Nice. Are you a fan of graphic novels?
I do. I mean, I am. Yeah. I've always really liked graphic novels. I always loved comics when I was a kid. I was a huge fan of Batman, and I actually am also doing a graphic novel Batman series for DC Comics, which is just like a dream come true.
Nice.
As well. Yeah, they really were just super open-minded with me, and I kind of ran this idea past them about, like, let's do Bruce Wayne in middle school, being the only kid in middle school without superpowers. And it's sort of like my version of the Batman origin story. So I did one of those called Bruce Wayne Not Super, but then the second one is coming out later this year, which is really exciting.
How fun. What is your writing process like?
I try to kind of work. I have kids, so my work process is kind of like matching a normal work day, so that I'm around in the morning and the evenings. So I do. I mean, there's a lot of brainstorming to the work I do. So I do like to start my day with a nice walk and jotting out ideas and that sort of thing, and figuring out like what's my plan for the day to write. Then I sort of come back and just get into it and just write as much as I can.
Do you write every day?
I try to like keep like a work day schedule. I think like I don't like to work weekends. I don't like to work when I'm on vacation. I don't write on weekends or on vacation, because I like to just give my mind a break from writing. That doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about things all the time. Every time I go someplace, I'm like, oh, I could do an action sequence here, or that's interesting. Let me investigate. So I'm always kind of working on ideas, but I'm not physically writing except for on weekdays.
You mentioned earlier that you had always wanted to be a writer. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it is just one of the, it was so early in my life that there's no point where I'm like, I can remember a time where I did not want to do this. So it just seems to just be part of who I was. My parents certainly, tried to make as many books available to me as possible. It wasn't like we didn't have that many, but I read them over and over and over again. And, I just, like, if I had paper, I was writing as well. And that was just me. That was just what I wanted to do.
So in college, you were a biology major.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you thought you needed to be a doctor to be a writer, or?
Well, I loved science, and so I loved animals, and so I love writing, but I was my parents said, like, every day I would ask, could we go to the zoo? So I loved it, and so there was this part of me, like, I didn't know if I would be able to be a successful writer, and so I was like, well, What would also be great? Well, maybe being like Jane Goodall or Diane Fossey,
Mm.
going off and studying animals out in the wilderness. That seemed really amazing to me. When push came to shove, I decided that I would rather come out to Hollywood and try and be a writer than go down to South America and live out in the Amazon and study capybaras, which is not a normal. Usually people are not torn between those two particular career paths, but that was really the decision that I made.
We can never do too much capybara exploration, I'm sure.
I mean, it is amazing to me that the world has finally caught up with me and recognized how amazing the capybara is. I mean, not even that many years ago, I would go into schools and say, who here's heard of the capybara? And, almost nobody would have their hand up. And now it's like everybody screams and kids are like, that's my favorite animal. And, there's capybara plushies and capybara t-shirt. They're all over the place. They're trending.
And you started it all.
Yes, you're welcome, everybody. Yes, it was all me.
Where do you get the ideas for your books?
So I mean, in a sense, because I can look at like what inspired, working the zoo or like really like being fascinated by spies. And so there's kind of this research element that still sort of comes up that I still just remain very curious about things. So I love going to museums. I love going to zoos. I love to travel as much as I possibly can. I love to, see interesting parts of the world and meet the people who live there. And because you really don't know where inspiration is going to strike. And, so I say Charlie Thorne was entirely driven by me being at a museum exhibition about at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And it was an exhibition about Albert Einstein. And it wasn't just about his science. It explained his science in a really fascinating way, but it also was kind of talking about who he was in his life. And I thought those two things were really fascinating. Like, what if there was a modern day Einstein who needed to know somebody as smart as Einstein behaved like Einstein did, maybe when he was younger, or how he would have behaved if he was 12 years old now. But they had to know the science that Einstein had understood and know his history, know the history of all sorts. That museum exhibition really sparked my interest in that. And then, of course, I read a whole bunch of stuff about Einstein and his science, and that led to me, traveling to different places to, learn what I could about him. And so, so that those they're an idea can start, but there is this big research process of me saying, gosh, will this idea really work? And if I'm reading up on something or studying it and recognizing that there's all these bits and pieces that would really dovetail nicely into the story I'm coming up with, then I'm like, okay, we're good to go.
Are you one of the types of writers that workshop books with other writers, or is it more solitary for you?
It's pretty solitary for me. I will occasionally bounce an idea off somebody. I do have a few people. When my kids were younger, I used to read early drafts of my books to them,
Mm.
which was always, that is something I really missed. That was always a great way to kind of figure out if something was really working, was to read it out loud to my kids. But I do have a few author friends who I might at a time or another sort of pass on a draft of something and ask for it. But I do remain pretty solitary in my writing.
What are you working on now?
Well, I've got more FunJungle books and more spy school books coming. So the newest FunJungle is called Ape Escape, which is a mystery about a stolen orphan gorilla and the race to figure out like who's taken it and protect it. The newest spy school will be out in October. And I've got some graphic novels. I've actually got 3 graphic novels this year. I've got Spy
Wow.
School, Secret Service. I've got the Spaced Out, which is the second in the Moonbase Alpha series. I've got that second in the Bruce Wayne series. I think we're calling that Bruce Wayne Bat Catastrophe, but I'm not 100% sure yet. And then I've got some other projects that I got some irons in the fire for some things that I hope to be able to sort of announce pretty soon.
You have one of those careers that is, well, people would be surprised it is a little bit unique in that you're actually a full-time writer. this
Yeah.
is what you do
Yeah.
for a living. And I think you discovered with Michael Crichton that he had some other irons in the fire doing something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's very common. What do you attribute your success in that regard?
Look, I mean, I think some of it is that I do, this is just something I enjoy and then I'm driven to do. And so there are writers out there who don't really love the process of writing. I think there are people who come to it saying like, oh, this is just an easy way, you sit at home and you just sit in front of your computer all day, but they don't really love it. And I think it's a tougher business if this is not something you love. It's not something that you're driven to, you're not excited to sit down and write. And that's something I really am. And I really do I have ideas all the time. And so I'm constantly thinking like, oh, that's something I do. That's something I do. So I've got these, my desk is a huge mess. I have ideas sort of scattered all over it. And, but there's just so many stories that I want to tell that I can't, one of the big things about being a writer, like the big way that you really market yourself is to get more books out there. And and so I'm always like, okay, well, let's try this. We've actually kind of, I wish I even come up with like we're doing we did the spy school entrance exam, which is a puzzle book, and that we're following that up with another puzzle book. And I don't really make the puzzles, but I met a puzzle creator who I was a really big fan of, and he was a fan of Spy School. And so he was like, let's do a puzzle book. And I was like, great. So, I love it. So I'm just chasing down the possibility, like any possibility I can to put stuff out there and get people to read my stuff.
Spy School has been optioned a couple times, and I've
Yes.
seen more than a few authors out there say that it's lovely because they just hand you money. It may become something, it may not become something, but
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there is this frustration with like the film business and TV business, which was part of why, I left it and moved into writing because it's not like anybody doesn't want to make stuff. They really do. It's just that so many pieces have to fall into place. You really have to catch lightning in a bottle to get something made. And in the book world, that's not really true. Basically, if I have a book contract, I turn that book in, that book's going to come out. But that was kind of something I even had to recognize. Like, when I first turned in my first draft of Belly Up, my publisher was like, okay, great, it'll come out in, 6 months. And I was like, yeah, I've heard this before. Like, sure it will. And they're like, no, it's going to come out. And, that's a different mindset than saying like, okay, maybe something will happen with this. And so I have a good number of other friends who came from television or film and moved into the books, and we sort of love that. Again, it's wonderful to get to write something that is going to come out. The people who've come from books first and moved into television film, they say, oh, somebody optioned something. I think it's a little like they'll kind of be like, they're all excited, like, oh yeah, this is going to happen, and then it does it, and they're like, how could it not happen, right? So it's a little like that uncertainty in the film business or TV business. Like if that's your whole career, that can be really difficult, and so it's kind of nice as an author now to be like, okay, like maybe something will happen. I'm doing everything I can. I really wish that, Spy School first came out in 2002. My young readers are always shocked to hear that I've been trying to get this made into a film or television show since before it even came out, right? I've been trying. More than most of my young readers have been alive. I've been trying to get this to happen, and it hasn't happened. And to their little minds, they're just like, I don't get that. How could somebody just not make it? You're like, well, you need tens of millions of dollars and director and producers and actors and all this stuff needs to come together to make that happen. I would have loved for the TV version to come out or the movie version to come out back in 2012, but it hasn't happened. I'm trying as much as I can though to make it happen now.
Well, people would be surprised, I think, to discover that often it has so very little to do with the quality of what has been produced. It's all the other stuff.
But yeah, Yeah, no, people can, they can say, oh, an executive can be like, oh, this was working, but then, something else came out and nobody watched it. So that kills your project. And you're like, that thing had nothing to do with my project. It wasn't even that similar, but that sort of thing can happen. They could, right now, um, they're just not making family films, live action family films really anymore for theaters. They're kind of doing it for for streaming a little bit, but that whole avenue of saying I've got a best-selling book, I mean, look at it. They did this with Percy Jackson. They did it with Harry Potter, and those are now becoming streaming shows because
Sure.
they're not even making another Percy Jackson movie. They're making a television show now. That's just how things have changed. So there's all these like other things out there in the world that really can end up affecting the project that you're trying to move as a film or a television show.
I saw, maybe it was just last week, Brandon Sanderson, a science fiction fantasy author who has sold 10 bajillion books or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're finally going, they say, going to make a movie of one of his books.
Yeah. Right. I mean, how much bigger could you be than Brandon Sanderson?
Right.
And yet that's how, but even that's the thing, like even when you're that big, you're right. So, so you get this weird sort of catch-22 with it where, they're not making, maybe they're not making one of my books into a movie because it's not popular enough, but maybe, it's, my publisher's like, well, it's not selling as much because it's not a movie. And you say, okay, well, somebody's got to, make it somewhere. But yeah, so it is but it costs a lot of money to make, it costs a lot more to make a television show than it does to publish a book.
Do you do a lot of presentations? Do you go out to schools, libraries, that sort of thing?
I do a good number of them. So I have kids. My kids are older now, and my youngest is just about to go off to college. And so I've actually had pulled back on my presentations a bit because I just didn't want to travel as much as I had. Once my daughter goes off to college this fall, I think I will maybe up my number of presentations that I do again. But but there's also, I've got a lot of writing to do. So if I get, I do have to say no to places sometimes if I just can't make the timing work out. So, I do my best. You do have to walk that line of like, okay, how often am I, flying across the country to talk at a school as opposed to staying here and getting my work done.
Do you do any Zooms, that sort of thing with schools?
I do Zooms. Yeah. Zooms are not so hard to do because it's about 45 minutes in the day, and so it's much easier to do a Zoom than it is to go to a school and do a presentation. I mean, I personally love going out to do presentations and encountering people, my readers face to face. It's much more fun than doing it on a Zoom where I can't really actually even see the audience. But look, it's the fact that we can do this now. I can actually do presentations all over the world is pretty amazing, just from my own home.
Is there a book or a series of books from your childhood that still resonates with you?
I've got to tell you because I think I love this question, so I always prepared. There's the Westing Game right there by Alan Raskin. Oh man, this book holds up so well. It's so good. This is one of the books that really made me when I was younger just say, wow, like a mystery is just this incredible genre that can. I mean, I remember reading this book and 3 points in this book, like in fourth grade, being like, wow, I should have seen that coming. I'm so impressed by this author. That's really, that's an impact that a mystery can have in a way that maybe other books don't have, because you're sort of matching wits against the author, trying to see if you can solve it or if they can sort of, if I read a book and reader out there says, wow, I should have seen that and I didn't see it, and that perfect. That's like the greatest thing for me to hear. So the other great mystery series that I loved as a kid is the Encyclopedia Brown series.
Oh, that's funny. That was the one in my head.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that so much influence that series had on me of my writing of how, that Encyclopedia Brown would always have this fact he would know, and then that fact would come in handy to solve. And so I learned so many cool facts by reading Encyclopedia Brown. So
Mm.
I love that. If I can build a mystery that hinges on some cool fact or another, that's amazing. Encyclopedia Brown was a detective, was a kid who was respected for being smart. Meanwhile, his best friend was Sally Kimball. She was this tough girl who could, beat up the bullies. That, like, there's a little, you can see the roots of Erica Hale from Spy School in Sally
Mm.
Kimball a bit. So there was just a lot that I took. I would reread my Encyclopedia Brown mysteries all the time.
Oh, yeah, me too, for sure. Great writing. What are you reading now?
I just read Karina Young Glazer, who's just one of my close author friend. Her book, The 9 Moons of Hanyu and Luli, which is just wonderful. And that just got a Newbery nomination, so well deserved there. Just a wonderful story there that's written for middle grade. My dear friend James Ponti, his book, his newest City Spies, Europa, just came out. That's a series that I absolutely adore. And then actually, I'm reading a little Bill Bryson nonfiction right now. I'm reading At Home by Bill Bryson, which
Mm.
is just a wonderful like book of history and little science sprinkled in there, and about basically where everything in our homes came from, and like the history just of everything in your house that you wouldn't think about. And it's full of fascinating facts that I love, that I can go like, maybe that's something I could drop into a story at some
Mm.
point.
Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I do hope that I'll have some good news on the Spy School becoming a TV show front relatively soon. I think we're making a little bit of progress there.
Good.
Yeah, so I do have a website, which is stuartgibbs.com. I keep people up to date there on what's happening. So I've got, like I said, I got some other irons in the fire, hoping to be able to announce some new exciting things, and that'll always be on my website for sure. That's the best place to find out, get details on what's happening with me.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And for our listeners and viewers, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. And again, thank you so much, Stuart.
Hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for everybody for tuning in.